Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Julie Cropp Gareleck, who's here to share with us her new book, Dare to Become, From the Corner Booth to the Corner Office. So are you ready to embark on a major business transformation, but unsure where to begin? Well, today's guest is going to answer just that. So Julie Cropp Gareleck is a respected and trusted leader in business communities that extend from the Northeast to the Southeast, and that includes CEOs and entrepreneurs of small to mid-sized businesses, as well as Fortune 100 companies. As the CEO of Junction Creative, an award-winning strategic agency that combines the intellectual capital of a business consulting firm with the creative execution of an advertising agency, Julie has consulted with more than 450 companies to build sustainable revenue-generating strategies. So let's welcome to the show, Julie Cropp Gareleck.
Thank you. Great to be here.
My goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. So what inspired you to write this?
As a business owner and an entrepreneur for the last 15 years, I had always in the back of my mind wanted to write a book, wasn't sure what I wanted to write the book about. And when I celebrated 13 years in business, as I was looking to set new milestones and new goals for myself, I was feeling a bit lost and decided to revisit journals that I had written from the time I was 16 years old until present day. I'm in my mid 40s, so lots of time has passed. I actually found strength in revisiting my past and realized that that 20-year-old that I once was fearless and eyes wide open. And it sort of reminded me of all of the things that I had been through, good and bad, over the course of my 25-year career. And it really inspired me to sit down and write this book, detailing my journey from working in my parents' restaurant when I was 16 years old and how the foundation really prepared me for venturing into the corporate world and eventually starting my own business.
So let's touch on that for a minute because I found that so fascinating. So what would you say that early kind of work experience, how that shaped your business mindset?
Absolutely. I mean, when you're 16, you're worried about hanging out with your friends on the weekend and, being young. But when I was 16 and my parents invested in themselves and also invested in the restaurant, it really became a family affair. And so I was working a lot more hours probably than most folks my age. But the beauty of it is that my parents really taught my sister and I the foundation of the business, what it took to hire and fire employees, how to put together a schedule, how to be financially responsible, how to juggle all of the things that come along with owning a business. I know in today's world, we glamorize business as, the $100,000 startup or $100 million business. And it all sounds so exciting. But in reality, behind the scenes, it takes a lot of grit. It takes a lot of hard work. And what they taught us at such an instrumental age, I mean, really laid the foundation for work ethic for me. And as I entered into the corporate world, I actually found those jobs to be a little less taxing than having worked the family business. So it definitely shaped my approach to work. It also opened my eyes to what was possible when you own and operate a business.
In your book, you share about how your father was that one person you can go to when you needed to make tough decisions and how he was there for you when you decided to quit a job one time. Can you share about that with us?
I don't advocate that people go quit their jobs. But yes, I in fact did quit my job and started my business the very next day. So I had reached a point in my career where I realized that if I wanted the type of environment that was positive and productive and that aligned with my goals, that I needed to create that for myself. And that's exactly what I did.
Was it that moment that propelled you to start your own business?
It was. I mean, going into work that day, I truly had no intention on quitting my job. I do think that some of the situations that I had faced, not just in that work environment, but the work environments leading up to this point in my career, I had almost reached just a level of complete frustration. And when I quit, and that's why I say I don't advocate that others just go make that decision, but it truly caught me off guard when I did it. But I also trust in myself. And I know that if I made that decision, that it was the right decision to make. And so, the very next day, after I told my husband what I had done, he was very, very supportive and said, look, Julie, if this is what you want, then you put all of your, work and energy into that. And I did. The very next day, I set up shop in a home office and got my computer system set up, got my to-do list going, and literally started working the business the next day.
So you talk about working the business. What type of business is that?
So I own a digital marketing agency. We are full service. So we work, think of anything an advertising agency can provide, whether it's digital, whether it's a website, branding. And at the time that I started 15 years ago, that was before Meta advertising existed, before, Instagram was as popular as what it was. So at the time, we really founded ourselves as a hybrid between a business consulting firm and an advertising agency. So we leveraged a lot of my business strategy background to help clients take a look at what their goals were and help put together results driven marketing campaigns. Certainly nowadays, everyone's doing results driven marketing because everything's measured. But 15 years ago was really the start of our ability to measure the effectiveness of marketing.
So much has changed since then. What was your biggest challenge that you faced during this transition?
Anytime you make a big jump like that, it's definitely a wake-up call from the standpoint that you don't have the consistency of a paycheck coming in every month, and that the success of the business really does rest on your shoulders. And so initially, because in my background, I had worked with, growing companies, I worked for an entrepreneurship institute, I knew what steps I had to take, right? Developing a business plan, putting together a website, going to the bank. Like I knew all of the things that I had to do. But I will say, having consulted with over 1,000 companies in my career, it's so much easier to be the consultant than it is to be the person in the hot seat. So I think for me, I was surprised at how hard it felt, because I think it was that reality that this was my business and that, its success was dependent on my capabilities. So I do think that was a little difficult getting started up. But, look, it takes a lot of hard work and grit. And I just kept working the plan every single day until we started to see the results we were looking for.
I think that's for a lot of people can be very scary when everything is on them. It's like you are making this happen. And
Yes.
it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Well, and so you talked about setting up your business plan and going to the bank. So, I mean, how did you manage to, start your startup without going into massive debt?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, when I started my business, I had decided that, I was very fortunate that I had saved some money from, my previous jobs that I'd had, and I had money in the bank. And I said to myself, look, there's enough money in here for personal expenses and to invest in the business for the next year to year and a half comfortably, right? Without having to make any adjustments to my day to day. And so when I had shared with my husband what I was looking to do, he is also a very successful entrepreneur. He had offered to fund the business and said, "Look, if giving you some funding will help you get there faster, I'm happy to do that." And I actually said no. um, I really felt it was important for me to learn those lessons by using my own money. I bootstrapped the business, and literally, was very mindful of what money I did have available. And while it might have taken me a little bit longer, right, to get there, I didn't want to take on debt from, traditional bank financing. I didn't want to find an investor. And so I really just went through my savings. And fortunately, 18 months into the journey, I was able to start closing very large corporate deals that, ended up putting money back into the savings account. But it definitely was difficult to manage. And I definitely think that experience, even to this day, 15 years in, has really taught me the value of every dollar that I earn and every dollar that we save. So it was definitely a good lesson.
Well, having that knowledge to take people from a starting point to business success, I mean, what a game changer that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and it makes it a lot worth it. I've worked with a lot of companies that have gotten funding, and I think sometimes depending on the company, depending on the individual, they can get lost in, they're used to making the big salaries. They're still getting the big salaries, but I do think there's something to be said for not taking a penny out of the business and really learning just how difficult it is to put those numbers on a spreadsheet, right? And how to then end up funding yourself and building that salary for yourself. So it's definitely difficult, but a great experience.
So, what would you say are some strategies that people can use to manage finances effectively, especially early on in the stages of a startup?
Yeah, great question. First thing I would tell anyone that's starting this process is it always takes a little bit longer than you think. So when I started my business, I said, "Hey, within 12 months I should be at this level." It's really more like 18 months, right? So, definitely be realistic in terms of the time to get to profitability or that time to get to significant revenue. So 18 months is really a good timeline to look at. The other thing I would say is that if you are not someone who loves financial spreadsheets and you are not somebody who's had a lot of exposure to building spreadsheets, right? I would say, invest in any type of courses that you can, just so that you can learn the fundamentals of kind of accounts receivable, accounts payable. And, the last thing I would say to people is once you've sort of gotten that knowledge, or if you already have that knowledge, that it's so critical as you start to hire employees that you always maintain enough financial visibility to protect those roles 6 months to a year out. Now, certainly in some businesses, you could lose a huge account that you didn't see coming, which can completely happen. But if you are going to look at hiring employees that come in, make sure you can pay that person their salary. Make sure you have visibility 6 months to a year out, because that will definitely lighten the stress level, knowing that you have that income to support that person so you aren't sort of earning it as you go.
So, how did you develop the grit and determination that you have that played such a crucial role in your success?
I attribute that, and I talk about this in the book. I attribute it a lot to watching my parents as they invested in the restaurant. They both worked in the corporate environment for 20 plus years. They bought a restaurant they had never eaten in. They took on a challenge that maybe wasn't the most popular. But, I watched them day in and day out for the better part of 10 years really pour their heart, their soul, their work. I mean, they led by example. If we were short a dishwasher, my dad or myself or my sister or my mom, we washed dishes, right? If a waitress was out, we waited tables. I mean, we really worked the business, and it was a hard business. The restaurant business is a hard business, and I will say having watched them lead that team and really show us all what it took, I am glad that I wasn't too indignant as a teenager to listen. But I look back and if you've ever worked in a restaurant and ever served breakfast, lunch, or dinner to thousands of people through the course of a day, there's nothing quite like standing behind a hot line in the kitchen and having 30 customers waiting for food out front. So the pressures are high. And I will say, just working in an environment like that really did prepare me when I came out of college and entered into the workforce.
I can see how that would also deal with business stress, you know.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, and so how do we determine our managing style? Because I know there are lots of different styles out there now, and some are more popular than others.
That's another. I wish I could pinpoint just one thing. What I can tell you is that, in my career, I had the privilege of working with mentors that really taught me a lot of great things on how to communicate, how to operate in the business world. And then I also worked for some folks who were not as supportive, and environments that were maybe a little bit more toxic, if that's what you want to call it. And I think that what I took from it is I knew what I never wanted to be. And I knew what it felt like to work for those mentors and how it made me feel as someone that worked with them. And so when I started Junction, I really wanted to carry over the positive sides that I had experienced, and also not replicate some of the mistakes that I had experienced for myself. And it certainly isn't perfect. I will tell you, in the 15 years, generations are different, from baby boomers to Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Zs. They all have a different approach to work, a different expectation from a work environment. So I would say that my management style is probably a work in progress, but at its core, there are just some key, foundational items that I expect from the team and that they expect from me. And I just try to always remember not to become the things that I disliked so much prior to starting my own company.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Julie Cropp Gareleck in regards to her new book, Dare to Become, From the Corner Booth to the Corner Office. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed, and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Julie Cropp Gareleck, who's sharing with us her new book, Dare to Become, From the Corner Booth to the Corner Office. Now, we hear about this quite a bit, but I'd love for you to share about the importance of treating people with respect in our business.
It's so critical. I think that technology has allowed us to become shorter with each other. We text, we use emojis to communicate. But I do think that in order for an environment to be successful, you do have to respect one another, and that's top down and bottom up, right? At Junction, one of the things I'm super proud of is that, our team, we all get along really well. We all work extremely hard, but we're all willing to jump in and help each other out if one of us is busy or maybe there's some pressure with a client. And at the end of the day, we do all respect each other for what we contribute to the team. There's no one person that's more important than another. And I do think that while that seems kind of simple or seems kind of, well, yeah, everyone should do that, there are so many people that don't do that. And so it's really, really important that you have respect, not just for your team members, but then that really translates to providing respect to your clients, right? Who are giving their money to our firm to deliver on a service. And so I do think at its core, it's one of the most important things that you can have in business.
This must be a question you get quite often. How do we know when's the right time to hire our first employee?
Yeah, timing is is hard. I will say in the early years, I probably took on too many responsibilities. I wore myself really thin. As you look at the business, if you find that you'll reach a certain place in your business where you can no longer do absolutely everything. And so it's really important to put down on paper the types of resources that you think you might need, the type of individual that you're looking for, and also be pragmatic, meaning that, and I see this a lot where folks think that they can hire a CMO, a chief marketing officer, they can hire an SEO specialist, a website developer, all in one person. And the reality is it takes multiple people to do those things really well. So it's important to identify the role and what those responsibilities will be. And then, as I touched on earlier, once you have visibility for that role for 6 months to a year, that's typically when you have kind of a good case to hire that employee. The last thing you want to do is be super quick to hire someone not knowing exactly what they're going to do and understanding that you can't expect one person to come to the business with the skill sets of four people, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And I think for a lot of people who are startups or new entrepreneurs, they feel overwhelmed. There's so much on their plate with the work that they have that I'm sure one of the questions that keeps coming up time and time again is, when do I hire someone?
I think for me, I was fortunate in the 18th month, we closed a large corporate account and I had to hire 10 plus people right away. But the budget supported that, right? But I will tell you, in that first couple of years, I was always fearful that if we lost that account, that how would that impact, right, those employees? And when you are hiring an employee, I think business owners do need to remember that you are responsible for their livelihood, that the money that you are paying them does pay for their life, and to not make those decisions so quickly. So I do think that's where I always talk about visibility, but it's really important to me because I don't want to become that entrepreneur that hires and then has to fire a month later because we lose a contract, right? That doesn't really set the business up to be sustainable over time.
What are some of the key differences in managing, let's say, someone that's a Generation Z worker compared to a baby boomer?
Yeah, I mean, it is different. I would say, both generations bring different skill sets to the table. I think the trick is, baby boomers, grew up in a work environment that didn't have technology, and then they watched technology explode and everything's changing every year. Everything, new versions, new platforms. Now AI is taking over. So, I think when you're looking at baby boomers or Gen Xers, they've been in the workforce for 25 plus years. And so when you're managing those employees, it is important to acknowledge the expertise that they bring, and that while some of their methods might not necessarily be the latest and greatest, tech driven approach, that they can teach us a lot about business and communication. And then, millennials or Gen Zs, they definitely bring a different set of skills to the marketplace. I mean, they grew up with technology, right? I mean, they've had it since the time they could hold a device in their hand. And so they can teach us a lot about how to use technology to get there faster. Maybe there's a better way, one that's not so laborious. But when you're managing them all in one workplace, I will say that I do think it's important to try to meet all of their needs as opposed to just listening to the loudest voice in the room. Because, everyone brings contributions and not everybody wants to have a happy hour at 4 or play ping pong at lunch. There are different wants and needs for each generation.
I'm probably not the one that would play ping pong at lunch. So, I get it.
Not that much fun. I probably wouldn't play ping pong at lunch.
But I know for some people that's like a big deal, having that different kind of balance. And which brings me to my next question for you. I mean, when we talk about work-life balance, it seems that that is something that people are really struggling with. So, how do you do it? I mean, you've been running a successful company for so long. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, work-life balance is this ethereal concept, right? I mean, if you're working and building and growing a business, balance is not the word I would probably use to define it. What I will say is that rather than looking at work as, oh, I want work to be X and I want life to be Y, you really have to say, okay, what are my goals with a career? Obviously, not everybody wants to work 16 hours a day for 4 years to build a business, and that's okay, right? But I do think that it is about setting the right boundary. So for myself, I became a mom 6 years into owning a business, and I will tell you, it forced me to put in boundaries that I could adhere to so that I could still have my company and work, but I was still also available and accessible to my beautiful children. And so I've carried certain boundaries with me. So I end my day at 5. I spend time with my children. If I have to do emails after hours, I will do it once they're in bed. And I've just kept that balance, if you will. I will say there are some times where it's not a completely balanced playing field, but work isn't by design supposed to be easy. Anyone who's been successful knows that. And so I do think instead of looking at it like work life balance, I think it's how do you set proper boundaries so that you're able to apply yourself to both areas of your life, whether it's work or your personal life.
And boundaries are such a big deal. And especially when it comes to being able to turn off the work
Yeah.
so you can have that personal time because each has its own demands.
It does. And I think that, I have some of my best ideas when I'm on vacation, right? When I'm not working because my mind is able to kind of think and aspirate and think through, what's next. But I do think that the environment's changing to where companies are trying to improve the lines, right? Where you're not working until 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. There are some companies where it's still required, right? To put in as many hours as you can in a day. But healthy boundaries and just checking in with yourself can help, right? And I know, for me, it was having children. Not everyone will have children, but really being able to take a look and say, hey, wait a second, if I'm going to be the best that I can be during the work hours, what do I need to put in place outside of work hours so that there is a balance between the two? And I do think in the early years, I didn't do enough of that. And so I work at it now every day just to make sure that it helps keep me level.
I also think work-life balance wasn't a thing like 15 years ago either. So,
I think it's funny. I want to say that I forget if it was there was a prominent CEO. She had come out and she had said, "Look, if you're working to achieve goals and you're a CEO or you're an entrepreneur, you're trading off something else. And if you're a mom or you're a wife or whatever that may be, you are compromising on a regular basis, right?" And so to your point, when everyone says, "Yes, but I want work-life balance," I'm like, when have we ever had work-life balance? I don't know that even when I was a child in the 70s and 80s, I don't remember my parents having a complete balance either. So I don't know. Maybe it's something we're all still striving to get to, but might take us a bit longer.
yeah, it almost sounds like a unicorn.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and with all the work experience and just the experiences that you have having your business, was there a mentor that played a huge part in your journey?
There have been several. I've been very fortunate, as I mentioned, to work with some great folks. Obviously, my parents or my first mentors, and both of them still continue to provide guidance to me even now. Right? They keep me in check. My first job in Philadelphia, I was very fortunate to work for a gentleman who really taught me how to operate in a high visibility environment. He taught me the skills and abilities that most bosses I don't think would have spent time on. He explained to me why things were a certain way. He explained to me that, hey, if you do this, then here are the two things that could happen as a result, right? And so he was also very instrumental. And then, certainly as I've grown in my career, there have been other mentors. It may sound silly, but I learn a lot from my husband. He's an entrepreneur as well, and he has taught me so many things without realizing it. I'm a curious individual and I always want to learn from the people around me. So I've just been very, very lucky that the folks that have crossed my path have really lifted me up and helped me get to where I am today.
One of the things that I've been kind of curious about is networking. And
Mhm.
you hear about this a lot. So, how important is networking in building and growing a business?
It's important. And, call me old school, and I'm not that old, I do think that technology has pushed us to try all of these online lead gen, you know, ways to reach people. And I, still believe in the face-to-face coffee meeting, picking up a phone, doing a Zoom call, checking in with colleagues, returning favors as well, right? So networking isn't just about what can someone do for you. I really also feel like networking is about what can you do for others. And so when done correctly, you can build a community of people around you that are supporting you. And it's interesting to me in my career, the folks that I've either impacted or that have remembered me come back many years later, and you never know why they've crossed your path as you're networking. And then they come back and they bring an exciting deal or they make an introduction that changes the course of your business. And so I would encourage all people get out, network, get out of the office, have coffee, talk to people, get to know people, learn about their stories, learn about their businesses, and just make that a key component of your schedule. Because I really will say, like, if I look back and people ask me this all the time, like, hey, how did you build this and how did you meet these people? And I said it wasn't just that I met them once, it's that I've been friends or I've been colleagues with them for a decade, because it does take time to invest in people. So it is very important.
And relationships, I heard this a long time ago, they're work. You have to put
Yes.
in work to them, but it's
Yes.
but it's so fulfilling.
It is. And one of, my someone that I had met in college, we are still friends to this day. He supported me. I supported him when he started his business, which was before I started mine. And then when I started my business, he returned the favor. And we've continued to partner for the last 18 years. And when you look at those types of relationships, I put this in my book as well, is that when you meet these individuals or companies or colleagues that invest in you as much as you invest in them, it's really amazing to see what can come out of that. And I think, to your point, like relationships are the difference, right? When you're struggling, they're great because they'll build you up. And when things are great, they're also the people that are going to be standing behind you, cheering you on. But relationships aren't built in a day. And so you just don't know when that relationship, might become the most valuable. But if you invest the time and you invest in people, they will invest in you.
What's a piece of advice that you would give somebody who is on the verge of becoming an entrepreneur, making that leap?
If you've been thinking about it and you feel this pull to start your own or to take the leap to invest in yourself, I would tell anyone to be prepared that it's going to be probably the most difficult work you've ever done, but it will also be the most rewarding work that you've ever done. And that if you work the business every day, whether you have success or whether you have challenge, if you just keep moving forward, focused on what your goals are, you will get there. You just have to keep working it. And I think some days it's so easy to give up or it's so easy to maybe change our minds. But I do promise you, if you do invest in yourself and you have a plan in place and you follow that plan every day, you work the business, you will get there.
How impactful is that? Well, Julie, I just love your book, Dare to Become. I thought it was such an informative and just great read. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn about your work and become part of your community?
Absolutely. Well, everyone can find me on my website, which is www.juliecroppgareleck.com. They can easily find the book by Googling it and picking their favorite location.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Julie. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Dare to Become, From the Corner Booth to the Corner Office. Dare to Become's available to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we Make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.